In a previous lesson, I explained that if you have a variable that you pass as an argument to a function, the variable name that's passed does not have to match the parameter name in the function header. And the reason for that is the scoping of your program, and scope is the subject of this lesson. Here notice that I have two variables right at the top of my script section. One is called myvar and the other is called output. Output is just a string variable that I'm going to use to assign variables as each function executes so that we can see what's happening at the end of the program. The real subject of this lesson, however, is the myvar variable. I've used this same name several times throughout the code. Here at the top of the code, I've assigned it the string global variable. A variable like this is accessible throughout the code in the document. So, because it's declared outside the functions, any of the functions in the document can have access to that variable. Let's have a look at the functions that I've declared. First of all, I should say that I've got 4 functions I'm really interested in, and the function down the bottom is just called when the document loads, and that's at the onload event. This runs the run.js code function that calls each of my 4 functions in turn, and at the end it writes output, that's the string that I've built up, so that we can see what's happened. Function 1, F1. It has a local variable, that is, a variable declared inside the function, and it's got the same name as the global variable, that is, the variable declared at the top outside all the functions, and it assigns to it a different string than was assigned to the global variable. Function 2, that also has a local variable, one that's declared inside the function. It's got the same name as both the variable in F1 and the global variable, and it assigns a different string. Function F3, that receives a parameter, and that's got the same name as the 2 local variables and the global variable, myvar, and it doesn't do anything with it, it just displays what its value is. And function 4 does not receive a parameter with that name, it does not have any local variables, but it still tries to display the value of myvar. So let's see what's going on. Load this up into the web browser. These are the results. So, F1, myvar, its value is, and it displays, and the output is the string myvar is a local variable to F1. So what's happened is that because this function has a variable with the same name as the global variable declared locally to the function, that variable takes precedence. That variable now is used instead of the global variable. Function 2, the same thing. I just put those 2 functions to show that the 2 local variables are entirely local to each function. Both cases they have a value which exists in the function only. The value in F1 is myvar is a local variable to F1. The value in F2 is myvar is also a local variable to F2. Function 3, F3, that doesn't have a local variable, but it does have the parameter with that name. When I call F3, I pass to it a string argument. This is a string argument. It arrives in the F3 function. That string argument is now assigned to the parameter myvar, and myvar now works like a local variable. It exists with its value defined in the function only. So this value exists in F3 only, and when it's displayed, it is displayed as the value that was sent to it. This is a string argument. Finally, function F4 doesn't have any parameters, it doesn't have any local variables, so when it gets the value of myvar, it takes on the value that was assigned to the global variable with that name. So when F1, F2 and F3 have executed, they each have 3 local values that have the identifier myvar, but those values do not affect the global value. So when the global value is accessed in F4, it still has its original value. You can think of scope as being like boxes within boxes. Each function is a little world unto itself, a little box, and that box can contain values which are not known outside the box. So myvar in f1 is known, its value is known and it exists, and it can be accessed inside f1 only. It does not have any effect outside f1, the same in f2. In f3, the myvar parameter can be accessed in f3 only. It does not have any effect on an argument with the same name outside f3. And in f4, that doesn't have a local identifier called myvar, so it has to go and look for one. And the first one it finds is this one up here. So that's what it accesses. It has to open its own little box to look for the value that's being used, and it looks in this outer box. So the outer box, the outer scope, is the global scope, and the inner boxes are the values that are local to each function. And only if an identifier does not exist with the particular name in that function does the box have to be opened and go and look in the outer scope. So scope is a way of declaring identifiers within a certain context. A function declares identifiers within a local context or scope, and outside of those functions they are said to have a global scope.